The silence of Buddha. Welcome back everyone to Mind Podcast. The name of Buddha Shakyamuni means the silent sage of the Shakya clan, or the silent sage of the Shakyas. The Sanskrit word muni means silent. Buddha also has the name Mahamuni. Maha means great, and Mahamuni means the great silent one, or the great sage of silence. Indeed, Buddha is a silent sage whose teachings aim to guide sentient beings to realms of peace and tranquility, calmness and serenity. All words age and disappear, they are born and die. Only silence is eternal and vibrant. The silence of Buddha from more than 2,500 years ago still remains within us today if we know how to see it and hear its echo within us. This silence is evidenced by Buddha's way of living, manifesting in every action of Buddha and pervading Buddha's teachings. This silence is as vast as space and as infinite as time. Let us try to understand a portion of the great meaning of that silence through Buddha's Dharma, for perhaps that boundless silence itself is liberation. Silence before questions. Some questions were posed to Buddha, but he did not answer because they were misguided and pointless questions. Clinging to such questions with mere logical arguments will lead to the traps of conventional, formulaic, and dualistic understanding. These traps lead to endless debates and continuous confusion, diverting one from the path of practice. Many teachers who lived during Buddha's time, that is the 6th century BCE, advocated various metaphysical philosophies, but Buddha shielded his disciples from these traps, not by prohibition, argument, or explanation, but by silence. There are a total of 14 such questions that Buddha did not answer. 1. Is the universe eternal? 2. Is the universe not eternal? 3. Is the universe both eternal and not eternal? 4. Is the universe neither eternal nor not eternal? 5. Is the universe finite? 6. Is the universe infinite? 7. Is the universe both finite and infinite? 8. Is the universe neither finite nor infinite? 9. Are the soul and the body identical? 10. Are the soul and the body different? 11. Does a liberated being exist after death? 12. Does a liberated being not exist after death? 13. Does a liberated being both exist and not exist after death? 14. Does a liberated being neither exist nor not exist after death? These questions are recorded in the Kula Malunkyaputta Sutta, which presents the unanswered questions posed by a disciple named Malunkyaputta to Buddha. Buddha did not answer these questions directly, but redirected Malunkyapputta's concerns to more practical matters. The sufferings that are present and the turmoil disturbing Malunkyapputta's mind. O Malunkyaputta, whether the universe is finite or infinite, what should be understood first is that there is birth, there is aging, there is death, there is sorrow, there is lamentation, there is pain, there is grief, and there is despair. As for me, I only teach you the cessation of these in this world, in this very life. Therefore, O Malunkyaputta, hold in mind what I have taught, as I have taught, and what I have not taught, as I have not taught. Excerpt from Kula Malunkyaputta Sutta, translated by Mohan Wujaratna. Scriptures recount a story. A man was struck by a poisoned arrow, but instead of removing the arrow and bandaging the wound, he questioned who shot the arrow, what the bowstring was made of, and how the poison was concocted. If he continued questioning, he would die before receiving answers to his inquiries. Buddha is not a religious leader imposing dogmas, nor a philosopher or scientist providing explanations about the universe or metaphysical arguments. Buddha is a spiritual teacher, guiding us to see the nature of our existence, and also a healer, helping us overcome suffering to find true and lasting peace. The Kula Malunkyaputta Sutta emphasizes the futility of metaphysical and purely logical debates. Knowledge of these things does not aid progress on the path because it is of no use for peace and enlightenment. What is beneficial for peace and enlightenment, which Buddha taught to his disciples, are these truths: the reality of suffering, the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering. Excerpt from Kula Malunkyaputta Sutta, translated by Etienne Lamotte. Instead of engaging in endless dualistic and conventional debates, Buddha brought Malunkyaputta back to reality to directly perceive the true nature of existence. Buddha gave his disciple Malunkyaputta, and also us today, a miraculous medicine, but did not mention the dimensions of the universe. When the medicine of Dharma has permeated our consciousness, dissolving the toxins of ignorance, The essence of the universe will appear clearly to us without needing to ask Buddha whether the universe is eternal. Silence is an open door, an infinite space. Rational questioning is a closed action, a form of dualism and bondage. By contemplating deeply, we will see the profound subtlety in the presentation and teachings of Buddha in the scriptures. For instance, the presentation of questions in the Kula Malunkyaputta Sutta. Each inquiry is raised sequentially with 4 questions. Is the universe eternal? Is the universe not eternal? Is the universe both eternal and not eternal? Is the universe neither eternal nor not eternal? If only one question is asked, is the universe eternal or not? The question will be incomplete, and its one-sidedness will lead to endless debate. The second part of the question, is the universe not eternal? The 2 presentations of the question reflect the opposing nature of dualism, yes and no. The third and fourth parts of the question, the universe is both eternal and not eternal, neither eternal nor not eternal, dissolve the entirety of the question, rendering the inquiry meaningless. In conclusion, a complete question already contains its answer. Buddha's silence is profoundly significant. Let's examine the above issue from another perspective. When Malunkyaputta asked Buddha whether the universe is eternal, he inadvertently fell into several errors. He viewed the universe as a clear-cut totality, while in reality, the universe is merely a composite of various elements. He perceived the universe as existing firmly, but the universe is merely a product of impermanence. He considered the universe as an entity outside of the mind, but in truth, the universe is merely a projection of the mind. These crude errors show that Malunkyapputta's question was fundamentally flawed. However, as previously mentioned, the third and fourth parts of the question concerning whether the universe is both eternal and not eternal indirectly dissolve the dualities of existence and non-existence, addressing the misuse of dualistic language. Malunkyapputta's question may appear logical, but it is actually meaningless. Meaningless because it relies on conventional, formulaic, and oppositional expression. Furthermore, to clarify for scientists and philosophers, Buddhists seek the absolute truth, a real truth of reality, free from the nature of illusion, impermanence, and change. This truth is called the absolute reality. They do not seek relative truths determined by observation, description, measurement, mathematical arguments, or scientific hypotheses, nor do they rely on purely rational arguments of philosophers. In summary, Buddha's silence is a method of cutting off purely rational thinking, breaking the conventional and formulaic nature of language, including the relative understanding of science and the purely rational understanding of philosophers. Understanding in Buddhism is a direct experiential knowledge discovered through practice and spiritual transformation, a supernatural, clear, and absolute understanding. This understanding is called wisdom, the silence of sensory perception. There is a highly important concept in Buddhism that relatively few people pay close attention to, the concept of the 6 senses, ayatana. Buddhism considers the brain as a sense organ like the others. For example, the ear hears sounds and the brain perceives thoughts and emotions. So what are the 6 senses? Eye sense, vision, eyes; ear sense, hearing, ears; nose sense, smell, nose; tongue sense, taste, tongue; body sense, touch, body; mind sense, thought and emotion; perception, brain. This classification and definition are unique to Buddhism. The concept of the 6 senses is central and simultaneously the object of practice because they are the source of all errors and disturbances. The usual classification includes the 6 senses, but detailed scriptures distinguish them into 12 types. Dvadasa ayatana. One side is the 6 sense organs, and the other side is the 6 types of objects perceived, collectively called the 12 worlds or realms of sensory knowledge. The 6 sense organs are called the 6 internal sources of knowledge, grahaka, including the source from the eye, caksarayatana, the source from the ear, srotrayatana, from the nose, granayatana, from the tongue, jivayatana, from the body, from the mind, mana ayatana. The 6 external objects, graya, of perception are forms, rupayatana; sounds, sabdayatana; smells, gandhayatana; tastes, rasayatana; textures, hard, soft, hot, cold, sprastavyatana; mental objects, dharmayatana; They are called sources because they generate the dualistic distinction of subject-object, grahya-grahaka, and act as intermediaries between the internal subject and the external object. However, from another perspective, the scriptures classify the 6 internal sources and the 6 external sources into 3 groups. The first group includes 5 internal sources: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. The second group includes 5 external sources: forms, visible by the eye, sounds, smells, tastes, tactile objects, recognizable by touch. The third group is the source of internal consciousness and the source of its objects, mental phenomena. The operation of the brain and mental objects has quite special and complex characteristics, so the scriptures classify them into a separate group, as in the classification above. Mental objects are often misunderstood as the self, the ego, the I, Atman. The brain's activities are nourished by the sources of the first and second groups: eye, ear, nose, tongue, forms, sounds, smells, tastes. This lengthy explanation may seem off topic, but it is not, because the 12 sources of perception are the 12 sources of pollution, meaning the noises, the disturbances that disrupt the mind, losing its silence. Understanding the operation of the 6 senses will make it easier to grasp the meaning of silence in Buddha's Dharma. Let's take the example of the ear sense and sound. Sound is the object of the ear. The ear perceives sound. The signal from the ear triggered by sound is transmitted to the brain. The brain perceives these signals and recognizes or understands it as sound. Sound consists of waves of various frequencies from low to high, and the ear can only perceive a certain range of these frequencies. A hard of hearing person cannot hear very faint sounds, and a deaf person cannot perceive sound at all. A congenitally deaf person has no experience of sound. A person who is distracted, even if sound stimulates the ear and the ear transmits the signal to the brain, the mind sense does not perceive it because the distraction covers it up. When the brain perceives the signal from the ear and understands it as sound, this understanding is the most initial interpretation arising from the mind sense or perception. The interpretation by the brain or perception, or more generally the mind, does not stop there. Why? Because some sounds are pure noises. Some are curses, laughter, cries, songs, music, praise, criticism, soothing words, stabbing, gunfire, explosions. The recognition and meaning of these sounds are interpreted by the mind sense. The interpretation does not stop at these forms of understanding, because emotions automatically arise in relation to the interpretation of signals, such as joy, sorrow, interest, anger, desire, hope, anxiety, fear, horror, etc. These emotions further cause disturbances in the mind, which then translate into physical reactions and result in behavior. The silence of the mind, or the 6th sense, is a state that eliminates all levels of interpretation mentioned above. A mind that perceives the external world through the 6 senses but does not interpret anything is a peaceful, calm, and completely tranquil mind. Emotions caused by the 6 senses interpretation lead to attachment or aversion, which then lead to intentions, and from intentions arise deliberate actions. The Sutra of 42 chapters records the words of Buddha Kassapa, a past Buddha, as taught by Buddha Shakyamuni. Desire arises from intention, attachment, or aversion. Intention arises from thoughts, interpretation. If both intention and thoughts become calm, silent, there will be no color desire and no deliberate actions. The above verses summarize the process of the pulling force of interpretation arising from the 6th sense, which is the mind or consciousness. The silence of meditation. One of the goals of meditation is to reveal a calm and peaceful mind, samatha. How does this peaceful and calm state of mind relate to the operation of the 6 senses? Practicing meditation or Zen is a method that helps the mind to settle, or in other words, to stop thinking. Understand that not thinking in this context means not letting the mind be controlled by a continuous chain of thoughts and emotions. Thus, the state of settled mind and not thinking is essentially silence. The silence of the mind in Zen Buddhism is an original or pure state before being disturbed by intentions, desires, thoughts, and concepts, meaning all forms of interpretation. A mind that is not disturbed by any form of interpretation is a truly balanced, silent, and clear state. This state represents the cessation of the following process: perception, interpretation, thought, emotion, intention, language, and deliberate actions. The silence of an undisturbed mind can be achieved through the sitting meditation posture and various other practices depending on the school. Sitting still, with only the movement of the breath remaining, helps the mind to settle. Let's take a practical example. You're sitting still in meditation, observing the operation of the mind, trying to follow and calm all thoughts and emotions. But suddenly, someone outside the door or in the next room starts whispering, speaking ill, or making unkind remarks about you. You focus on listening, your face may flush with anger, and you might stand up to confront or argue. Or while sitting in meditation, you hear two neighbors arguing in front of your house. Their argument escalating, using vulgar language, seemingly about to fight. Although this has nothing to do with you, you might stand up to go see. All these reactions, these deliberate actions, are due to interpretation. Sound waves from the external source stimulate the internal source, which is the ear sense, sending signals to the brain. The brain receives these signals, compares them with memory, knowledge and dualistic experience, formulaic and conventional understanding accumulated earlier, and interprets them as speech or arguments. The interpretation is pushed further. The speech is an insult to you. The argument suggests an impending conflict. These interpretations lead to emotions: anger because of the insult, curiosity about the upcoming fight. These emotions, like anger and curiosity, transform into deliberate actions, making you abandon the meditation posture and stand up. Why is it important to identify such actions as deliberate? Because all deliberate actions create karma, and karma means action. There are non-deliberate actions such as digestion, burping, coughing, blinking, stretching limbs. These actions are called neutral. Although neutral, they still create karma, but the karma generated is very small, almost negligible. Every movement creates consequences except for complete silence, an absolute non-violent state of both body and mind, which does not generate karma. So how can a person meditating avoid being disturbed by external circumstances and stand up? They must stop the process of interpretation arising from the sixth sense. We cannot stop sound waves, prevent the ear from receiving these waves, or stop the brain from receiving the signals. This example can be applied to other senses like sight, smell, etc. In short, the operation of the six senses in relation to the external environment remains in its normal operating condition, but interpretation does not occur. The meditator remains fully aware of the contact of the mind with the external world, but emotions and intentions do not manifest. When one is aware of and controls the six senses, a meditator can keep the mind balanced and calm in any situation, even during normal activities, meaning not needing to sit still. This person can be working, walking in a market, on the street, amidst the noise and chaos of the external environment, but the mind remains silent, serene, as if working or walking in a peaceful, tranquil, and radiant realm. It is important to clarify that this state is not one of unconsciousness or sensory paralysis, but rather a state of expanded and heightened awareness of the six senses, a state of true mindfulness, different from distraction or insensitivity, such as being deaf, blind, or comatose. Coma, or damaged senses that do not register signals, is a silent state of death, not the silence of an awakened mind. Koans and the silence of Zen Buddhism. Zen Buddhism is a practice centered around silence, thoroughly implementing silence, and minimizing conventional and dualistic language. Aside from the basic Mahayana Buddhist scriptures used in Zen, the scriptures, roku, specific to this school mainly consist of anecdotes, short dialogues, mondo, and especially koans koan. The term koan originates from the Chinese gongden, Korean komden, and Japanese koan, but the word does not appear in classical scriptures in Sanskrit or Pali. Koans are a novel application of the Buddhist teachings that emerged during the widespread development of Zen in China, particularly from the 6th century and especially from the 10th century to the present day. Koans consist of thousands of stories or short statements and quotations from scriptures, compiled into collections such as the Blue Cliff Record, the Gateless Gate, the Book of Serenity, and the Record of Linji. Zen texts list a total of 1,700 koans, with about a third still regularly used in practice today. Modern Zen masters continue to create new koans. Each Zen student, upon taking refuge, is often given a koan by their teacher. So what exactly is a koan? Literally, the word koan means a public case or record of a public legal decision. In Zen Buddhism, a koan is a method used for spiritual practice. The teacher gives the student a koan, and the student is free to explore, contemplate, and find their own solution. A koan can be seen as a form of dialogue between teacher and student, but its primary purpose is not dialogue, since the meaning of a koan often defies logic, seems nonsensical, surprising, or absurd. Overall, it transcends all reasoning, conventional understanding, and ordinary logical processes. A koan might simply be silence, a single word, a harsh statement, or a very violent gesture from the teacher, even physical blows to awaken the student. Here are a few examples of koans. Does a dog have Buddha nature or not? A koan by Master Zhaozhou. The sound of one hand clapping, a koan by Master Hakuin. What was your original face before you were born? A koan by the sixth patriarch Huineng. What is Buddha? 3 pounds of flax, a koan by Master Dongshan. If you meet the Buddha, kill the Buddha. If you meet the patriarch, kill the patriarch, a koan by Master Linji. Whenever anyone asked Master Guizong a question, he would simply raise one finger. One day, a layperson asked the novice what the master had taught him. The novice raised one finger. Master Guizong heard about this, called the novice, grabbed his hand, and cut off the finger. The novice ran away screaming, blood gushing. The master chased after him, then suddenly shouted. The novice turned around and the master raised one finger. The novice suddenly attained enlightenment. The unexpected, abrupt, and illogical nature of koans aims to stop the conventional interpretation of the mind. The bewildering and absurd nature of a koan pushes the mind into silence, breaking free from all attachment to standards. If a Zen student continues to cling to pure logical reasoning or formulate thinking, the koan will have no effect. In Zen Buddhism, words hold no significance and cannot be used to solve koans. Questions like, does a dog have Buddha nature? The sound of one hand clapping, the original face before birth, etc., have no appropriate answers. What is Buddha? 3 pounds of flax. The surprising and illogical nature of the question and answer cuts off all rational responses and pre-existing logical expectations in the mind. Such questioning and answering is a verbal trick to help the mind discard all reasoning and return to peace, the original essence of the mind. Master Linji's statement, if you meet the Buddha, kill the Buddha. If you meet the patriarch, kill the patriarch, in the gateless gate, is a type of koan that shocks the Zen student into letting go of all attachments, even to the Buddha or the Dharma. Master Guizong's raised finger as an answer implies abandoning all notions and logical arguments, transcending the meaningless nature of words, bringing the questioner back to silence. However, the finger is still an expression, a basis for attachment. The novice, having lost his finger, had nothing to cling to. When he turned back and saw his master holding a knife and shouting, raising a finger, he suddenly realized the futility and emptiness of all logical reasoning and conventional interpretations, just like his severed finger. This novice later became a famous Zen master. Let's return to the example of a person meditating in the previous section, related to the concept of stopping conventional, dualistic, and logical thinking, preventing the sixth sense, mind, from interpreting. If the concept of stopping all thought seems theoretical, the use of koans is certainly a practical method that helps the sixth sense not interpret, bringing the mind back to a pure, peaceful, and calm state. The meditator in the previous example, even if not disturbed by external turmoil, such as hearing someone speak ill of them or hearing two neighbors quarrel, creating emotional turmoil that makes them stand up, could still react in two different ways. The first attitude is to keep the mind calm and peaceful despite hearing someone speak ill of them with malicious intent and falsehood, or hearing two neighbors arguing. If they can maintain a clear, calm mind, the sixth sense perceives the sound or speech but does not interpret, and the silence in the mind remains absolute and infinite. This is the reaction of an arhat. The second attitude is for the meditator to develop boundless compassion and sympathy for the person speaking ill of them with malicious intent, pitying them for being entangled in negative karma, and for the neighbors arguing, feeling compassion for them as they are prey to emotional turmoil, shaking with anger and ready to fight. These emotions, although positive in nature as compassion, are still emotions and will continue to bind the meditator in the cycle of rebirth. This compassion is the reaction of a bodhisattva. Not speaking is the Buddha's speech. The Lankavatara Sutra is an important Mahayana Buddhist scripture, presenting Buddha nature and enlightenment beyond all dualistic concepts of language. This sutra clearly states, from enlightenment until nirvana, the Buddha has never spoken a word, nor will he ever speak a word, because not speaking is the Buddha's speech. What does this mean? It means that all the Dharma the Buddha taught relies on dualistic and conventional language. The ultimate nature of reality cannot be spoken or described in words. The world of samsara or nirvana are just names, a formulaic expression, containing no absolute value. Without the opposing world of nirvana, samsara or the cycle of rebirth means nothing, and vice versa. White and black, existence and non-existence, good and bad, subject and object. Opposing each other in pairs is the dualistic nature of all our conventional understanding. Using dualistic language to convey and interpret understanding means that understanding is no longer understanding, as it cannot adequately describe suchness or the true and ultimate nature of reality. Only practice, the silence of meditation, and pure spiritual intuition, free from ignorance, can realize the absolute truth or the true nature of all phenomena. That is, all objects and events governed by the law of causality and impermanence, constantly changing around us. The above discussion captures what is found in the Buddha's Dharma. However, the Buddha also directly taught through silence. Once, on Vulture Peak, before a large audience eagerly waiting to hear him speak, the Buddha simply held up a flower and remained silent. Everyone was puzzled, except for one disciple, Mahakasyapa, whose face suddenly lit up with a smile. Upon seeing the flower and the Buddha's silence, Mahakasyapa was awakened and attained enlightenment. The Buddha then said to Mahakasyapa, "I possess the true Dharma I, the marvelous mind of nirvana, the true form of the formless, the subtle Dharma gate, not dependent on words and letters, but a special transmission outside the scriptures. This I entrust to Mahakasyapa." This incident is known as Niyam Hua Vitio, the flower sermon, illustrating the transmission of Dharma beyond conventional language, directly from mind to mind, Ditum Trintum. It also shows that nirvana is a concept in Buddhism that is expressed and defined differently depending on the context. According to the Lankavatara Sutra, translated into Chinese during the Tang Dynasty, nirvana means seeing into the abode of reality, true to its true nature. In Zen Buddhism, seeing into the abode of reality is the state of prajnaparamita, transcendent wisdom. This wisdom was directly received by Avalokiteshvara from the silence of the Buddha in meditation and taught to Sariputra in the Heart Sutra. In previous sections, we see that the absolute truth of all phenomena, the ultimate nature of reality, can only be perceived through practice, silence, and spiritual intuition. However, the above story adds another dimension. This ultimate nature of reality can only be transmitted through silence, from enlightened mind to awakened mind, such as the direct reception between the enlightened mind of the Buddha and the awakened mind of Mahakasyapa. After the Buddha's passing, Mahakasyapa was considered the leader of the Sangha and the first patriarch of Indian Zen Buddhism. The transmission of the robe and bowl continued until the 28th patriarch Bodhidharma, 470 to 573. In 520, Bodhidharma traveled by sea to Guangzhou to spread the teachings in China, meeting with Emperor Wu of Liang in Nanjing but failing to convince him. Bodhidharma then crossed the Yangtze River to Luoyang and took residence in the Shaolin Monastery on Mount Song. He spent 9 years in silent meditation, facing a wall, until Huike approached him, seeking to become his disciple. Bodhidharma became the first patriarch of Chinese Zen Buddhism, and Huike was later transmitted the teachings and became the second patriarch. The silence of Huike. During his time spreading the Dharma in China, Bodhidharma once called his disciples to test their understanding before returning to India. Each disciple stood up and presented their understanding of the Dharma, and each time Bodhidharma commented that they had grasped a part of his teaching, such as the skin, the flesh, or the bones. When it was Huike's turn, he simply bowed and remained silent. Bodhidharma then said, "You have attained the marrow of my teaching." Indeed, the Dharma or enlightenment cannot be explained in words. Words in the Dharma are merely a way to adapt to each individual's inclinations, nature, abilities, and understanding, indirectly expressing something deeper, an aspect of reality, to help individuals avoid confusion, density, and ignorance. The state of transcending all preconceived notions and established patterns is the state of not being confined to any predetermined form, free from the constraints and manipulations of pure reasoning and logical argumentation. Logical reasoning and argumentation, if directed inward, lead to confusion and dead ends. If directed outward, lead to endless and futile debates. If one understands the silence of the Buddha, all worries and questions driven by the desire to understand will disappear. It is the ego that makes us crave, even for understanding. Although noble, the craving for understanding still leads to attachment and fear. Fear of our ignorance, the same fear that made Malunkyaputta stop meditating to ask the Buddha whether the universe is eternal or not. Understanding the silence of the Buddha, we will feel truly at peace, as if sitting beside the Buddha in his silence. The non-expression of the mind is not a dead end. Silence is not a barrier, but a door opening to another world, a world of non-duality, without opposition, without subject and object. In that world, there are no arguments, no debates, no inner self, and no external environment. In that world, one can converse with flowers, hear the sound of insects in the grass, the shifting of a grain of sand in the desert, and even the conversations between the stars. One will understand the deep interconnection in the most profound form. A flower, a star in the sky, or a grain of sand in the desert is no different from oneself. They are within us, and we are within them, all merging and harmonizing together. Here is a poem from Dogen, 1200 to 1253, a great Japanese Zen master, translated as follows. In the gentle spring breeze, petals fall. The words I chant, who could guess, are the songs of the flowers. The silence of a Tibetan monk. In the latest book by French scholar Alain Grossray, spanning over 900 pages entitled The Great Book of Buddhism, Le Grand Livre de Bouddhisme, Albin Michel Publishing, released in late 2007, a debate between a Korean Zen master and a Tibetan master is recounted. This meeting took place in the 1970s in the United States between Korean Zen master Song San and Tibetan monk Kalu Rinpoche. Buddhist experts and American Buddhists attended, paying close attention and anticipating the outcome of the debate between these two profound Buddhist teachers. Each master was accompanied by a large number of disciples dressed according to their respective traditions. The session began with great solemnity and formality. The Korean Zen master started, possibly intending to use Zen questioning techniques to test the Tibetan monk. He took an orange from his sleeve and asked Kalu Rinpoche, "What is this?" The audience looked at the orange and then stared at the Tibetan monk, waiting for an answer. But Kalu Rinpoche sat in meditation posture, silent and unmoving, showing no sign of response. The Korean master stood up, brought the orange close to the Tibetan monk's face, and shouted, "What is this?" Kalu Rinpoche remained silent. After a while, he leaned over to his interpreter and whispered a few words. The interpreter then announced to the audience, "Rinpoche says, what is the issue? There are no oranges in Tibet." The meeting ended abruptly and unexpectedly. Alain Grossray recounts this story to conclude a section on Zen koans. Indeed, the story is worthy of being considered a profound koan. However, we can explore several aspects of this story. The debate, though brief, was deeply meaningful and rich. Zen and Tantric Buddhism are two completely different schools, developed in different geographic locations, but both converge at the ultimate level of Dharma. The story reflects the flower sermon incident, but is much noisier. When Zen master Song San presented the orange and asked, everyone understood it was an orange because it was a conventional understanding. Although they waited for an answer, they already knew it was an orange. They anticipated something more interesting, but Kalu Rinpoche did not respond. If he had said orange, the debate would continue. If he said lemon, an argument would ensue. Instead, Kalu Rinpoche stated there are no oranges in Tibet, implying the orange is merely a conventional understanding, not absolute, not worth answering. A Tibetan who lives in the Himalayas has no idea what an orange is, so where is the truth? The second intention was to answer indirectly, unrelated to the question, which is a method to stop logical reasoning and the mind's articulation. He used Zen techniques to answer a Zen master's question: the silence of the Tathagata and the noise of the secular world. The three bodies of the Buddha are the abode of silence, an immense quietude. The Buddha achieved upon enlightenment and passed on to us. But can we see that silence? The opening lines of the Diamond Sutra describe the Buddha as a simple monk, begging for food, eating, quenching his thirst, then sitting under a tree with a peaceful and calm mind. Indeed, the Buddha walked barefoot, had only 2 robes patched from scraps of cloth, and a bowl for alms. This simplicity and quietude, the Buddha paid a high price to achieve, the price of enlightenment. It is not difficult to see the stark contrast between the 2 phases of the Buddha's existence, before and after enlightenment. Before enlightenment, his life was noisy and luxurious in the palace, followed by a life of asceticism full of endurance, with a mind constantly agitated by the suffering of sentient beings and the thick veil of ignorance covering the world. The second phase is the period of peace and quiet after the Buddha's enlightenment, having seen the true nature of reality, the empty and silent nature of all phenomena. For 49 years after enlightenment, the Buddha taught us the path to liberation from worldly suffering, a path leading from turmoil to joy, from noise to silence. The Buddha also set an example with his life, transitioning from the noise of the palace to the simple and peaceful life of a mendicant monk. This silent way of life reflects the true nature. Silence is nirvana, and nirvana is silence. When he was old, on his journey of teaching the Dharma, the Buddha stopped in a quiet forest, folded his robe into 4 to use as a pillow, and lay down between 2 sala trees. He lay on his side with one leg resting on the other. Some of us call ourselves Buddhists, but we always go against the Buddha's path, moving from simplicity to complexity, from poverty to wealth, from hardship to luxury, from silence to noise, whether in reality or just in dreams and illusions. We crave noise. Noise at birth, in every life event, and even in death. Even after death, we still strive for pride with drums, flowers, incense, morning cries, eulogies, and prayers for the dead. We always go in the opposite direction of the Buddha, looking forward to the illusion of a nirvana behind us. In chapter 5 of the Diamond Sutra, the Buddha asks his disciple Subhuti whether the Tathagata can be recognized by his 32 major and 80 minor auspicious marks. Subhuti answers no. The Buddha continues, Subhuti, it is as you say, all appearances are deceptive. If you see all appearances as non-appearances, then you see the Tathagata. The true Tathagata is empty, void, and silent. We, without any auspicious marks, constantly strive to add every possible mark to our meaningless names given by our parents, titles, degrees, medals, responsibilities. These marks first nourish and reinforce our ego, then deceive and exploit other simple beings. Through Dharma, the Buddha opens a world of peace, calm, and happiness for us. Instead of entering, we step out. We do not see the door to that world, being attracted by the opposing, noisy, and turbulent world that dazzles us. In the famous collection of koans titled Gateless Gate, Wumen Quan, by Zen Master Wumen Huikai, 1183-1260, it is written, "The great way is gateless, with thousands of paths. Once you pass through this gate, you walk freely in the universe. But our step is a backward step. From the clear nature of Buddha nature, we step into the ignorance and turmoil of the mind. From the peace and joy of life, we step into the world of schemes and calculations." When looking at the Buddha statue, we do not recognize the depth and silence on the Buddha's face. We only hear the noisy bells and chanting for peace, paying attention to whether our names are read correctly on the prayer list. In conclusion, words are the source of disputes, noise is the source of distraction and confusion, while silence brings peace and happiness. Words are limited and narrow, but silence is infinite, transcending the dimensions of time and space. Silence is the essence of the Dharma and Nirvana, manifesting from the absolute non-violence of body and mind. This state is serene, joyful, peaceful, simple, and non-dual, expressing absolute freedom. Let us return to the story of the flower sermon for a final conclusion. When the Buddha held up a flower, he remained the Buddha, the tranquil one. The flower was still just a flower, neither beautiful nor ugly, silent as a flower. Mākāśyapa was still a disciple of the Buddha, his smile appearing and fading away in silence. Between the Buddha's enlightenment, the silence of a flower, and the awakened mind of Ma Kashyapa, there was no object or subject, no Buddha, no disciple, no flower, no teacher, no teaching, no listener. All was one, only the crowd was restless, bewildered, and waiting.
Application of the Eightfold Path in Life, Right Effort. Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. The importance of right effort. Right effort, encompassing the three aspects of avoiding evil, doing good, and purifying the mind, is described by the Buddha through Dhammapada verse 183. Avoid all evil deeds, undertake all good deeds. Keep your mind pure. This is the essence of the Buddha's teaching. The element of right effort is crucial as it creates a close relationship in the practice of cause and effect with the first 5 factors: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, and right livelihood. The last 2 factors that complete the path are right mindfulness and right concentration. In the 7 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, if right effort is missing, path will not yield results. Although it is ranked 6th, its importance supports the other factors, leading to success. The Pali Canon states, the Noble Eightfold Path is regarded as the middle way, capable of helping ordinary people become enlightened beings at 2 different levels. 1. Helps practitioners achieve liberation, mainly for those who are monastics. 2. Helps lay people, who have roles in society, attain success, merit, and happiness. Right effort has profound social, ethical, and spiritual significance, serving as the foundation of the self-reliant doctrine of cause and effect. It requires greater personal effort from individuals compared to other religions. Believers in monotheistic and polytheistic religions often entrust their faith to a deity, and happiness will manifest. Making promises is easy, but for the careless or incapable, promises abound. Those who understand cause and effect never make reckless promises. Effort and contribution are required to achieve relative results. By applying the 4 core practices, practitioners clearly see their value in all aspects. Right effort is defined as efforts toward noble, peaceful, happy, tranquil, and harmonious goals. This does not mean seeking one's benefit at the expense of others. It contrasts with selfish efforts that violate laws and ethics, bringing suffering to oneself and others. Right effort differs from addictive habits. Addicts may pursue their goals even more intensely than those striving for righteous aims, such as smokers, drug users, and alcoholics. Without these substances, they cannot function and rush towards them like moths to a flame, even risking legal violations to achieve their desires. Defining effort as the pursuit of a goal is not sufficient, as it may encourage many to engage in wrongful acts that negatively impact society. Right effort is entirely different from reckless, stubborn, and obstinate attitudes. Recklessness, as in the saying, deaf to the gunfire, or lepers fear no sores, involves rushing ahead, doing whatever one wants without fear of the law, punishment, societal shame, or conscience. Such a person is bold, creating suffering and becoming a victim, walking the wrong path or using the wrong method, but believing they are right, disregarding all sincere advice, regardless of who it comes from or how it is presented. They continue on their path. Despite significant efforts and investments, little righteous fruit is reaped. This is something to avoid and transform. 4 methods of practice. First, abandon evil deeds. Every core practice has 2 parts. 1. The first part states the consequences, whether good or bad. 2. The second part addresses how to conclude it and how to develop it positively or negatively. To achieve this, one must overcome 3 attitudes: guilt, ending sin, and deeds against the law, ethics, and conscience. The awareness of the wrong one has committed is the first step. It is a mistake to be immersed in guilt. Such people punish themselves, lack clarity, and may harm themselves or even end their lives. The suffering they create has no chance to end. It exists in the form of cause and will bear fruit in the future. We must strive to overcome condemnation, criticism, and gossip. Overcoming them is no simple task. Major and serious collapses are often reported by the media. In Vietnam, the Công An newspaper often covers such stories. In the era of information technology, bad news spreads widely on the internet, passed from one person to another. As a result, the social stigma and discrimination faced by those who have committed crimes creates significant psychological pressure which must be overcome for them to renew their lives and awaken to their mistakes. Turning back from wrongdoing requires effort, moving in the opposite direction of harmful actions and law violations. The law is not the only scale to determine what is sinful, evil, or unwholesome. Some actions considered crimes under one legal system may be viewed as normal under another. Evaluating crime and wrongdoing through legal frameworks is relative. Buddhism teaches that evaluating such actions through the lens of ethical cause and effect is the most accurate measure to determine what is sinful, which behaviors should be prohibited, and which should be developed. The Buddha teaches in both the Pali Canon and the Mahayana scriptures through 4 aspects. Aspect 1. Stopping unwholesome actions. The first step in stopping unwholesome actions must stem from the realization of their harmful consequences, not just in the present but also potentially in future lives, both for oneself and others. One must make an effort to renew oneself. For example, in 2009, US President Barack Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize, surprising and bewildering many who followed this award for efforts toward world peace. In previous years, no US president had shown such efforts. Was Obama's awarding justified? In truth, there was no favoritism. Peace Prize is awarded to those who make practical contributions to peace, not just theoretical ones. Scholars may write hundreds of books about world peace, but whether these ideas can be applied is a different matter. What was Obama's effort? He called on the major powers, who possessed large amounts of nuclear and atomic weapons, to publicly declare and reach agreements to collectively disarm them in stages. This effort aimed to create a world free of nuclear weapons. The United States disclosed its nuclear arsenal, the largest on the planet, followed by Russia, China, Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, and other countries like Iran and North Korea, which are on the verge of developing nuclear bombs. Such efforts are highly significant in modern society, where political ideologies or economic power struggles between NATO and opposing blocs, or between the Middle East and alliances like G7 and G20, or between extremist and progressive groups could lead to world wars, shattering the planet into fragments. All forms of nuclear bombs are considered evil, and producing them is an evil act. Many nations argue that preparing weapons is the best means of maintaining peace. With advanced modern weaponry, foreign invaders dare not attack. This reasoning held true in past wars when military strength equated to the strength of truth and power. Today, under the United Nations principles, the level of legitimate protection is much higher. We no longer need to fear, and there is no room for excuses like preparing for war to protect peace. Thus, arms manufacturing and trading, although the largest economic source on the planet, are wrongful practices that should be eliminated. Eliminating suffering. Aspect 2. Stopping suffering and evil. Stopping suffering and evil not only means ceasing actions that violate the law and harm oneself and others. Suffering results from misunderstanding, the wrong application of methods, or being victims of bad people and negative forces in society. Suffering encompasses 4 aspects: grief, lamentation, pain, and distress. Grief. These are feelings of sadness or worry, whether great or small. It is necessary to stop them at their source. Applying mindfulness, meaning doing each task at the appropriate time and place, prevents mixing work responsibilities with home life or vice versa. This way, the pressure on emotions can be released. Grief. This includes feelings of sadness, despair, disappointment, and internal psychological suppression, which sometimes exist subtly in the form of the unconscious. We must make efforts to transform these emotions rather than suppress and repress them. Melancholy. This refers to vague sadness, where one may not even understand why they are sad or concerned about trivial matters, lost in thought about things that don't lead to any result. Distress. Distress is the suffering caused by oneself, by others, or by unfavorable environmental conditions. It is also an object that we should work to transform. Physical suffering, such as illness or natural disasters, workplace accidents, and traffic accidents, must be overcome through the practice of contemplating non-self. This is not me, this body is not me, it only plays a functional role, and I will not foolishly carry the mind suffering with this unfortunate body. By relatively detaching from suffering, can absolutely transform it, becoming liberated from all suffering. Eliminating suffering. Aspect 2. Stopping suffering and evil. Stopping suffering and evil not only means ceasing actions that violate the law and harm oneself and others. Suffering results from misunderstanding, the wrong application of methods, or being victims of bad people and negative forces in society. Suffering encompasses 4 aspects: grief, lamentation, pain, and distress. Grief. These are feelings of sadness or worry, whether great or small. It is necessary to stop them at their source. Applying mindfulness, meaning doing each task at the appropriate time and place, prevents mixing work responsibilities with home life or vice versa. This way, the pressure on emotions can be released. Grief. This includes feelings of sadness, despair, disappointment, and internal psychological suppression, which sometimes exist subtly in the form of the unconscious. We must make efforts to transform these emotions rather than suppress and repress them. Melancholy. This refers to vague sadness, where one may not even understand why they are sad or concerned about trivial matters, lost in thought about things that don't lead to any result. Distress. Distress is the suffering caused by oneself, by others, or by unfavorable environmental conditions. It is also an object that we should work to transform. Physical suffering, such as illness or natural disasters, workplace accidents, and traffic accidents, must be overcome through the practice of contemplating non-self. This is not me, this body is not me, it only plays a functional role, and I will not foolishly carry the mind's suffering with this unfortunate body. By relatively detaching from suffering, can absolutely transform it, becoming liberated from all suffering. Aspect 3. Stopping attachment. There are 4 main objects of attachment. If we do not let go of them, we will become victims of misfortune. 1. Attachment to permanence. The belief that everything is eternal, leading to the notion of predetermined fate or destiny, arranged by a higher power, causing one to avoid making efforts to transform themselves. 2. Attachment to nihilism. The belief that death is the end, that it marks the final point of life, leading to neglect of ethical life, thinking that everyone meets the same end, without reward or punishment, without cause and effect, without good or bad realms continuing after death. 3. Attachment to self. The belief that this body belongs to oneself eternally, even though it only serves a functional role. Excessive self-importance leads to difficulties in social relationship. 4. Attachment to materiality. Clinging to possessions and phenomena, resulting in suffering. Instead of making efforts to renew oneself, many people become immersed in emotional attachments to what has been lost or no longer exists. Attachment to knowledge. Believing that one's knowledge is complete, perfect, and true, dismissing all sincere advice, even ignoring the truth when it knocks at the door. Stopping delusional thoughts is first defined as refraining from inappropriate thoughts, views, and attitudes that do not align with the objective truth, dependent origination, and cause and effect. These thoughts do not aim to resolve problems based on cause and effect. Delusional thoughts cause us to live in illusions, or even delusions. Delusional thoughts can be understood as any ideas not based on mindfulness, where one is not in control of the body, emotions, or mind, leading neither to enlightenment nor to happiness for oneself and others. The realm of delusional thoughts is vast, and practitioners must make efforts to stop them. Delusional thoughts are harmful thoughts that must be transformed, avoiding the arising of unwholesome deeds, or unwholesome deeds that have not yet been committed. One should not allow them to arise. Concluding what has already been done is neither easy nor difficult. It is not easy if we are aware of the legal and ethical consequences, as overcoming them is challenging. It is not difficult if the actions belong to the past, and we make efforts to renew ourselves, which can lead to success. Fate is created by ourselves, not predetermined. Avoiding uncommitted, unwholesome deeds is not as simple as it sounds. Sometimes these deeds are hidden like secret agents or icebergs beneath the unconscious, and only a small catalyst can trigger wrongdoing. All evil lurking in the unconscious can easily cause us to lose control and self-discipline. The hardest part is stopping evil that has not yet been done. Only those who are diligent in their spiritual practice can uproot these deeply ingrained causes. Most of us succeed in stopping committed evil, but uncommitted evil can sometimes be hard to recognize and overcome. For example, when faced with traps or pressure, choosing between death or committing a wrongful act, many choose life. even if it means engaging in unwholesome deeds, under the justification of survival. Traps such as being drugged or stimulated, where one loses self-control, can lead to actions that one would never have imagined doing. Extreme caution is required to stop uncommitted evil deeds. Stopping the arising of evil. The Buddha taught that to prevent the arising of negative actions, one should avoid environments and conditions that are negative, refrain from associating with bad people, not follow false teachers, and not feel obligated to comply with requests that lack diligence, even if they come from our parents. Here, a high level of personal freedom and democracy is emphasized, guiding us to follow what is good and abandon what is bad. Some people are overly accommodating, saying things like, "I'll practice the way others do. If others misbehave, I'll follow." Or, "The world is dirty, but I'll stay clean. The world is drunk, but I'll stay sober." When the pressure from wrongdoers and negativity is overwhelming, if we don't go along with them, we might be excluded or trapped. We could become accomplices or allies in their wrongdoing. Efforts to stop evil that we have not yet committed are challenging and may sometimes come at a great cost. To maintain righteousness, we may need to give up our jobs or leave toxic environments, which can impact our financial stability. Whether we can endure the process of abandoning and escaping negative environments depends on our level of diligence and how much we can bear during the time we are striving to find new, positive direction. A couple once asked the question. They were raising livestock, supplying around 10,000 chickens to the market each day. Is this sinful? They don't kill the chickens, just supply them. The butchers handle the killing. Should this occupation be ended or not? How should it be ended? From an ethical standpoint, raising livestock directly leads to slaughter. Even though it serves to feed people, we have other choices. Humans can survive without this. Secondly, while this business yields immediate profit, the long-term consequences could include shortened lifespans, illness, or even insanity later in life, as well as unpredictable debts and grudges in future lives. Although we might try to ignore these consequences, they will still happen. When placed on the scale, the economic benefit is minimal compared to the harm that spans many future lives. Why not choose a safer path? Thirdly, changing occupations may lead to financial loss because of the investments we've made. Even though they are only raising chickens and not slaughtering them, this occupation ultimately leads to the killing of many animals. Stopping such a practice before it grows is much better. After hearing this analysis, the couple expressed that it would be difficult to change. They had invested so much, giving it up would result in a loss. It would take 5 to 10 years to recover their investment before they could make a profit. They were surprised and uncertain about what to do. Preventing the arising of evil, stopping uncommitted acts of killing is extremely difficult. It also requires effort to cease what has already been done, as timely prevention spares us from karmic retribution. If we see the consequences but do not make the effort to stop, the fault lies with us. We must clearly recognize evil and avoid trapping ourselves in bad environments with negative influences like drugs and other harmful temptations. We should not allow negativity to continue to exist. This must arise from self-awareness. We shouldn't wait to be forced into rehabilitation centers, where resentment may grow because we were compelled by law and might not make a genuine effort to change. Voluntarily seeking help is a better solution. In Buddhism, this is an effort to prevent uncommitted evil. We shouldn't allow conditions for evil to arise. We should work 8 hours a day at the office, then return home to spend time with family, fulfilling our responsibilities to bring joy to others. With this awareness, the desire to wander, indulge, gamble, drink, or engage in other negative behaviors rarely arises. When we are busy, negativity doesn't have a chance to exist. For retirees, when family members take care of household tasks, one should volunteer at temples or participate in beneficial organizations to use time wisely, generate merit, and prevent the opportunity for negative thoughts to arise. Idleness breeds evil. In Chinese translations, the Vietnamese Zen master Kun Dun Ho used the term feng qi. Feng means to throw away, and qi means to let go. Together, these words strongly convey the need to discard and let go of uncommitted evil actions. Learning from the harm in others' experiences. Seeing the harm others experience, we must learn from it. If we see a car ahead fall into a pit, we would be foolish to follow. We should be grateful for bad people, unfortunate lives, and the imperfections in life, as they help us become better. Instead of cursing, isolating, or condemning these people, we should pity them and also have compassion for ourselves so that we don't become victims like they have. Continuing to develop good deeds. In the Pali scriptures, the Buddha taught that any thought, action, or speech that brings happiness to oneself and others in the present and the future should be carried out. In the Mahayana Sutras, practice of selflessness and directing all positive values toward the path of enlightenment and liberation is considered the highest good and is greatly encouraged. Good deeds are categorized into the following levels: engaging in charitable and social work, guiding our children towards a bright future, studying with a sense of responsibility toward the nation, honoring parents as if they were two Buddhas in the house, being grateful to teachers, and being thankful to everyone in society. Without these people, we would not have the results we enjoy today. This is called good from the perspective of merit. Buddhist practitioners are encouraged to develop good deeds to the highest possible level. The Amitabha Sutra teaches that one must do good extensively, not carelessly, half-heartedly, or just enough. Efforts to do good should never cease, even after becoming a Buddha. When one's merit and virtues are complete, one must still continue performing good deeds. Goodness is boundless. What may seem abundant in relation to oneself is small compared to those who do more. Compared to those who do less, our efforts may seem significant. Compared to those who do more, we are just a grain of sand compared to a mountain, a drop of water compared to the ocean, or a breath of air compared to the vast universe. With this understanding, there is no room for pride or arrogance. Virtue is related to practice. For example, loving kindness is the love that brings joy. Compassion is empathy for suffering. Joy is finding happiness in our own practice and success and in the success of others. Equanimity is letting go of all bad things and even the results of our practice to attain a higher level. Practicing generosity, living ethically, and cultivating wisdom are also considered essential virtues. Humility, respect, maintaining discipline, living with a sense of gratitude and duty, knowing how to repay kindness, these are all good virtues. Learning the Dharma teachings given by the Buddha, those passed down by the Bodhisattvas, Arhats, and esteemed masters, also encouraged. In this regard, the Mahayana scriptures encourage learning as many Dharma teachings as possible. Some people hold extreme beliefs focusing only on a single practice, such as chanting the Buddha's name, without understanding anything beyond that. The Buddha's teaching does not promote such rigidity. Healing the illnesses of both body and mind is like treating the internal organs. If we treat liver disease without acknowledging its connection to the stomach and kidneys, the liver's healing could lead to stomach issues. Similarly, liver disease can negatively impact the kidneys if not treated with the whole system in mind. Treating the suffering of afflictions, karma, and pain follows the same principle. Besides practicing one's main method, whether meditation or Pure Land, one should also learn and integrate other Dharma methods to support different aspects of practice. These methods never conflict with one another. This understanding helps us avoid extreme attitudes of respecting our own practice while disparaging others. In the end, we must strive to progress and achieve the fruits of our chosen practice. This requires a serious, methodical, step-by-step approach with determination to reach our goal. Developing good deeds. Never give up halfway. Goodness is the nourishment of ethics, companion of spirituality, and the foundation of happiness and achievement in life. Giving up due to adversity, criticism, or jealousy is like ending our own opportunity for positive benefit. To achieve success, those who strive to do good must see adversity as a normal part of life, as illustrated by the following comparison. Taller the house, the stronger the wind. For houses of 3 stories with an average height of 12 or 13 meters, the wind is normal. But for a house 120 stories high, the wind speed reaches several dozen kilometers per hour, with no barriers from surrounding structure. Thus, the force of the wind is immense, and we must have sturdy doors. Advantages of being at a high elevation. Being in a higher position also has its advantages, such as having a panoramic view of everything around. enjoying fresh air, and saving energy if we build with glass walls, thick enough to withstand storms, providing safety during earthquakes of 6.5 or higher. Developing good deeds with a selfless spirit is already challenging, but doing so with selflessness, even more difficult. Many people do good deeds for fame or profit. Many invest money in advertisements, airing for 30 seconds or a few minutes on television or well-known newspaper. Meanwhile, investing the same or even a smaller amount in charitable activities can have a much greater social impact, spreading goodwill widely and garnering economic benefits equal to or even greater than advertising campaign. Many companies have adopted this approach, doing good with the understanding that it benefits them. However, because their motivation is selfish, the merit they generate is limited, and the ethical and human value of their actions is not very high. In Buddhism, we are taught to develop goodness from a selfless perspective, recognizing that it is our responsibility to help others. When we see others suffering, we cannot feel at peace. The pain of humanity as a whole affects us, and we experience happiness when we have the opportunity to participate, even in part, in good deed. There is no need for others to acknowledge, praise, or glorify us, as the law of cause and effect will naturally bring about positive results. Encouraging others to join in good deeds is, according to the Amitabha Sutra, creating good karma. Many people practice Buddhism only for themselves, recognizing the spiritual benefits for their own happiness, but failing to encourage their spouse or family members to follow suit. We are fortunate when spouses can practice Buddhism together, leading to shared happiness and preventing collapse during failures or criticisms. Some Buddhists are hesitant to guide their children toward Buddhism, thinking they are still young and should be free to choose. This belief, that it's never too late to guide them, is a misunderstanding or a lack of responsibility. Such individuals miss the opportunity to help others in matters of Dharma. There are many ways to help. One method is distributing Dharma books, CDs, and tapes, which can help many people find their way back to the right path. There are inspiring lectures and meaningful works that can transform lives. Efforts to encourage others to walk the positive path alongside us embody the spirit of good deeds as taught in Mahayana Buddhism. We often do good deeds spontaneously, only when opportunities arise. For example, attending the One Day of Peace retreat at Fo-Kwang Temple has expanded our knowledge of Buddhism, contributing to personal growth for many participants. In the past, when someone lied or upset us, we might have become angry and cut off relationships. Now, understanding the Dharma, we recognize these reactions as afflictions and have learned to transform them, maintaining peace of mind and happiness. Doing good deeds with the spirit of perfection. Paramita. Complete good deeds with the spirit of paramita. Paramita is defined as, first, not seeing oneself as the doer of the good deed. Second, encouraging others to do good. And third, praising others for their good deeds. These are the three perspectives through which good deeds are made more universal, global, socialized, and communal, without attaching ourselves to the outcome or becoming arrogant, seeking recognition from others. Doing good so others can follow our example is different from doing it to glorify ourselves. These two are completely different. The Tukmat Min, recollection of past lives, is a process that recounts the past lives of the Buddha for others to learn from, not to glorify him. The Arhats also use Tukmat Min from their experiences. Therefore, recounting with the intent to elevate oneself is completely different from sharing to elevate goodness. Do not see those we help as objects of charity. Natural disasters create countless victims who need food, clothing, basic medical supplies like tents, beds, mosquito nets, drinking water, dry food, and financial aid for medical treatment and healthcare services. We must clearly recognize the severe consequences that others face, knowing that they may not have the capacity to save themselves, and we must step in to help. Here, the Buddha teaches us not to focus on whether others acknowledge our kindness, so that the ego can be uprooted. We should not view charitable acts, whether large or small, as our possession, nor should we see ourselves as the owner of the donations, with someone else receiving them. Some people prefer to donate gifts because they cost only around 30,000 VND, but the large package makes for a good photo opportunity. On the other hand, giving an envelope containing 2,000 VND, which is just a piece of paper, may not look impressive in photos or videos. Many people think along these lines. We must understand that each charity event has different recipients with different needs. For example, in mental health facilities, giving money is pointless as they can't use it, and giving soap or toothbrushes may not work because they may bite or break them. Providing dry food is what they can use. Similarly, for those in the final stages of AIDS, the best support is medicine. We should convert the money into medicine, as prescribed by centers based on the severity of the illness, without overemphasizing the need for photos and videos just to show donors. Of course, some documentation is necessary, but we should not let our hearts be attached to it. When we give on behalf of others, documentation is required. However, when we make personal donations to a temple, whether or not we receive a receipt of merit doesn't matter. In other words, we should not see ourselves as the doers of good, nor see others as the recipients of our charity. We should not view the material goods we donate as our possessions. Those who can do this are practicing the perfection of charity, dana paramita. In the Pali Canon, the perfection of charity is defined from three perspectives. Joy before doing the deed. We eagerly organize and encourage others to join us in doing good. Joy while doing the deed. Even if it's hard, we give up sleep, endure difficult roads, wade through rivers and climb mountains to help others. Whether they are grateful or not, we are still joyful. Joy after doing the deed. When we reflect on the act, we feel happiness, regardless of whether others remember our kindness or not. These three mental attitudes help us complete the perfection of charity and are the core of the third level of practice. Developing good deeds that have not yet been done. For good deeds we haven't yet done, we must seek creative ways, find conditions to develop them, and look for opportunities to contribute. Those who wait for perfect conditions will never accomplish anything significant. Those who think, "I'll only do good when all conditions are favorable," will never achieve anything meaningful for others. We must be inventive, create opportunities, and not worry if others misunderstand our intentions as self-serving or think we lack noble motivation. We should remain undeterred and committed. Many people, when re-evaluating their actions, tend to give up without strong resolve or the spirit of a bodhisattva. Additionally, jealousy can arise when we see others doing good, leading to feelings of envy, resentment towards their success, and even attempts to undermine them through gossip, slander, false accusations. When we witness the harm that befalls those who do good without proper caution, we might lose the enthusiasm and determination to continue with the good we are doing or plan to do. Overcoming such challenges is essential for success. Doing good is like planting a large tree that takes decades to bear fruit. We only do something expecting immediate rewards during our lifetime, we will never achieve anything truly worthwhile. The benefits of investing in human development over a span of 100 years allow us to see the long-term vision. Planting trees such as oil trees, ironwood trees, Bodhi trees, or crepe myrtles requires 3 or 4 decades to grow enough to provide shade. If we are now in our 60s, in 10 or 20 years, we may pass away before seeing the fruits of our efforts. But we still do it because it holds value for the ecological environment and provides numerous other positive outcomes in the future. Seek every opportunity to create good deeds. In this context, there are 4 key aspects. Creating conditions for good deeds to arise. The Pali Canon teaches, associate with virtuous people, learn the Dharma, consult experienced elders, and stay close to good friends. Efforts to learn from knowledgeable teachers. The Mahayana scriptures emphasize not underestimating small good deeds, like how a drop of water can gradually fill a container. If we overthink and overcalculate the effort involved in doing good, we may find it difficult to take action. We must recognize the future value of these actions for others and ourselves, making it easier to create conditions for good deeds to arise. Everyone must revere their parents as 2 Buddhas in the home. We must be filial to our parents, and only then can we encourage our children to be filial to us. It is a matter of cause and effect. Setting an example. We must first demonstrate filial piety by caring for our parents and serving as a role model for our children and grandchildren. developing good deeds that have not yet been done. Once a good deed is initiated, it cannot thrive without being nurtured. Take, for instance, planting crops. Farmers rely on the rainy season, which provides favorable conditions for the seeds to sprout, allowing the rice to grow without much extra care. We must create favorable conditions for good deeds to flourish, referred to as supportive conditions, panacea. If these conditions are not continuously strengthened and expanded, progress will stall or regress. Planting a tree during the rainy season may mean we don't need to water it much, but if it only rains a few times a week, we must water the tree twice a day. In the first 6 months, we must ensure the tree grows quickly, and when the roots have taken hold, it can thrive without much additional care. However, in the early stages, we must invest significant effort. This supportive conditions approach is the method for maximizing the development of good deeds, ensuring good deeds reach full completion. Many people invest only 30% or 60% of their effort and then give up because good deeds often take a long time to bear fruit. In such cases, we should remind ourselves, once you've mounted the tiger, you cannot dismount. When it comes to doing good, quitting would be a waste. However, if you're engaged in negative behavior, you should get off the tiger as soon as possible. In doing good, we need to create more catalysts to ensure completion. In the scriptures, the Buddha taught that if a string is pulled too tight, it will snap. And even if it doesn't, the sound it produces will not be harmonious. Doing good deeds is similar to spiritual practice. Someone who practices too harshly will not endure. If we practice as if we will die tomorrow, it's unlikely we will achieve lasting results. In the early stages of practice, we may be highly diligent, but as we progress, we need to pace ourselves like a marathon. If we only sprint, we will exhaust ourselves and quit. Being overly rigid in practice without achieving balance can lead to pride and ultimately abandoning our merit. New monks, or those who have just received precepts, must be cautious, as arrogance can easily arise. Beginners may chant 6 times a day, add extra repentance sessions, and study the Dharma twice daily, filling every moment with practice. However, long-time practitioners may only chant twice daily, with Dharma study reduced to once a day. Their foundation is solid and they don't need to rush. Some lay Buddhists report listening to 4 Dharma lectures a day and expect praise. I tell them that such excessive practice is risky. They are fortunate not to fall into delusion. Listening to 4 lectures, 5 to 6 hours a day, can lead to addiction, even if it is a positive addiction. Being overly absorbed in the Dharma may lead one to neglect family and social responsibilities. It's important to balance practice and worldly responsibility. For lay people, chanting once a day and listening to 1 Dharma talk is sufficient. The remaining time should be spent reflecting, absorbing, and living in accordance with the teaching, creating conditions for the full flourishing of good deeds. We must be patient in cultivating good deeds. Just as planting large trees like oil trees, ironwood, Bodhi trees, or crepe myrtles requires 30 to 40 years before they provide shade, doing good often takes time to yield results. If we are in our 60s, we may not live long enough to enjoy the shade ourselves, but we still plant these trees because they offer ecological and other long-term benefit. Likewise, good deeds may not provide immediate personal gain, but they contribute positively to future generations and the environment. Reading a lot or chanting frequently without understanding brings no benefit, much like reading too many prescriptions or too many maps detailing how to travel from one place to another without actually having the time to go. By the time you're done reading, there's no time left to travel, so how can there be any results? Creating the conditions for achieving genuine effort requires persistence and a proper method. It is not enough to rely solely on determination or enthusiasm. Enthusiasm without a method leads to going in circles. In Mahayana Buddhism, doing good deeds must be dedicated to the attainment of the supreme Bodhi, ultimate enlightenment. Only those who aim for enlightenment can achieve good at the highest level. For lay practitioners, this may be difficult, but at the very least, we should orient our minds toward this goal, to avoid being attached to conditioned phenomena, which lead only to rewards or enjoyment in the 3 realms of unconsciousness: the realm of desire, the realm of form, and the formless realm. Those practicing spirituality should aim for the highest level of liberation. The Buddha taught that liberation from the cycle of birth and death varies depending on whether one is a layperson or a monastic, and whether one's mind is directed toward Bodhi at a relative or absolute level. The 4 core practices mentioned earlier are the 4 arts leading to success. These range from good deeds related to one's profession or career to moral virtues, spiritual good, and ultimately the happiness of enlightenment.